while I'm thinking about it, I'm doing Mercury as well, because Mercury is one of my favorite planets, and he's cool as fuck. So we did the moon, and we did the sun. A couple things that I want to get off right at the bat about Mercury. Mercury is probably the most subtle planet, and what I mean is you can't tell his effects prominently. I don't know how to explain that without just basically saying that he governs most really, really subtle things that you probably don't know are there. He's also the one planet that is changeable. So the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are masculine. Venus and the Moon are feminine. Mercury can be either of them. He's changeable, like Quicksilver, which is the metal that he rules, which is Mercury. Isn't that interesting? I want to go over just the basic stuff that I've been doing with the Moon and the Sun, just reading off of SkyScript. Again, it's very easy. If you're curious about it, just go to SkyScript in Google, type it in, look up the planet. It's not hard. If you want a name for Mercury, I go through the names because they're on the list. Hermes is a good one. I strongly recommend Hermes because that's just what Mercury's known as. Also, as we mentioned before, he rules Gemini by day and Virgo by night. That's his day and night signs, or masculine and feminine signs. His signs of detriment are Sagittarius and Pisces. Pisces is interesting, and I'll get to that in just a second. His exaltation is in Virgo, so if Mercury is in Virgo, he gets rulership points and exaltation points. And if he's within the first 7 degrees, he gets +2 more points for being in term. Don't worry too much about these points. I get a little fanatic with them ignorantly because the numbers mean different things than what they actually represent. It's not, oh, your stats are up, bro. No, they all mean different things. So try not to worry about it. I do because I'm stupid. Dunno. He rules the air triplicity by night. In about 15 videos, we'll get into triplicity. Hopefully. So here's what I wanted to tell you about Mercury's nature. He can be masculine or feminine, depending on his placement. If in conjunction with a masculine planet, for example, Mars, he becomes masculine. If with a feminine, then feminine. Interestingly enough, if he's conjunct Mars as well, then he not only becomes masculine, but he becomes malefic too, because Mars is malefic. Just like if he were conjoined with Jupiter, he would become masculine and a benefic. As a rule. That's not even considering the aspects that he's taking in and getting and receiving and what house he's in, stuff like that. But as a rule, whatever planet he's close to, he just adapts to, becomes that. And he exemplifies what the planet that he's closest to is. He mimics them. By its own nature, however, on his own, Mercury is cold and dry and melancholic. That's one of the other temperaments, along with phlegmatic, choleric, I don't know how to pronounce it, and sanguine. Mercury is adaptable, as I had just mentioned. Its influence is beneficial when associated with good planets, malefic when associated with bad planets. Again, just mentioned it. Mercury rules the animal spirit and is the author of subtlety, tricks, devices, and perjury. Now, this I want to disagree on. Mercury does not rule the animal spirit. Mercury rules the human mind, I think, the intellectual spirit. Mercury is not a on all fours spirit. It's not. Mercury is a scientist, mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, anyone in the sciences. Chemists, too. That doesn't sound very animalistic to me. So I have a question about reading that. I don't really believe that. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but that's just what I think. And here's how it goes. People signified: literary men, philosophers, mathematicians, astrologers, merchants, secretaries, diviners, sculpturers, poets, orators, the speakers, advocates, schoolmasters, exchangers of money, attorneys, sometimes thieves. None of these sound like animals, except maybe thieves. So, just interesting. Think more like the moon would be ruling the emotions, and I think in reality the moon actually does rule the animal spirit, because it's the most primal one. And Mercury rules the intellectual spirit, if you will. I mean, I don't think that I've ever seen a chemist that like turns into like a werewolf. And then he goes and he like puts something in a bottle. Yes, I'm very animalistic today. What? just funny. Colors and savors. This was tricky because Mercury has no real description. Which is interesting because in itself that kind of is a description. So he rules mixed and new colors, gray mixed with sky color, such as is on the neck of the stock dove. This says linsey woolsey colors. Let me have... What do you think of my linsey woolsey shirt? Linsey woolsey? I don't even know what color that is, but Mercury apparently rules that color. Or consisting of many colors mixed into one. Now this is good even for a simple man like me. I can get that. So tie-dye, just mixed, a conglomeration of multi-colors, basically. Because, as it says here, I love this sentence. I don't know why, I just like it. Of savors, a hodgepodge of all things together, so that no one can give it any true name. That's Mercury. It's subtle as fuck. You don't really have a description of it. Like, for example, the sun. Oh, a king. And Mercury, of course, they have different merchants and stuff. But really, what is he? Is he the exchanger of, like, goods? Or is he the practice of science? I mean, that's just how I see it. He's a subtle, but in permeating everything in the world. He's everywhere, and yet you'll never know where he is. I'm here, and I'm not here. Think of it like that. So, when it comes to herbs for Mercury, a lot of them are like these dry, seedy herbs. I think some, for example, would be like tumbleweed seeds. They're super dry. They don't really smell that good. Ones that come off the top of my head are fennel, lavender, and marjoram. Fennel, in my opinion, is probably the best Mercury plant because fennel, according to Agrippa, is under Virgo, which, as I had just mentioned, Virgo allows Mercury to be exalted and in rulership. Which is, I don't know if that's really true or if that makes sense, but if you're going to worship Mercury and you want to have incense, I recommend crushing up some lavender and fennel and burning it on a charcoal tablet. Can't hurt. I think fennel's good. It smells like licorice. So those are some ideas. It also goes on to say walnuts, filbert trees. I don't actually know what a filbert tree is. Adder's tongue, dragonwort, aniseeds, and marjoram. I also believe that lemongrass belongs to Mercury. I have some lemongrass oil that I use for my Mercury rituals, but I can't remember where I read it. It was some book that I deleted. I don't have it, and it doesn't say it on there. Sometimes I have my doubts about using lemongrass, and some people even say you can use cinnamon, but then other places say, no, cinnamon's part of the sun. So it gets difficult to decide what works and what doesn't. I mean, when I rub lemongrass oil on my hands, it kicks my nose. It's like, and it's almost like a breath of fresh air. I mean, it kind of sounds like the sun, but it's zesty. Like, it's zesty, it has a kick, it's hard to explain. It makes you feel like moving. That's how I feel. I mean, it's not like I'm going to smell lemongrass and be like, oh, time to start running! But it gets your mind moving, which I think is the idea of what Mercury is, a stimulant. So those are just some of the things that I have explained to you about herbs under Mercury. Places. This isn't too bad. Tradesmen shops, markets, fairs, schools, bowling alleys, tennis courts, and common halls. Makes sense for tennis courts. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. All those things can be represented by Mercury because of what Mercury represents. This one's kind of interesting. Minerals and stones. Quicksilver. Ah, yes, let's just make a mercury quicksilver ring. Oh no, it just evaporated in the air into my nose and now I'm poisoned and I die. You can use tin or silver or a combination of both if you want to worship Mercury and offer him some stuff. I use tin because it's malleable, and I read in Agrippa that tin works because using mercury, the actual mercury, is not going to be easy to come by and it will kill you. So don't use that. This also says milestones. I think this means stones that you use to mark roads. I don't really think, and I don't advocate going out on the highway and just being like, I'll take this. But it's, what are you doing? Well, it's a milestone. I need it for my occult rituals. I'll be like, come with me, sir. We have to talk to you. And they club you over the head. Don't do that. They also rule, this is the one that I use, agate. He rules agates. Why? I read this somewhere, but now I can't remember. I want to say it's because they're multicolored, or they can be multicolored, and oh god, I can't remember. When I get back to it, if I remember, I'll put it in the comments. I'll probably forget. But they rule agate. Also, topaz and vitriol. So, I think in this context, vitriol is like something that it causes a chemical reaction. So, and that makes sense because Mercury is the chemist. Interesting. Also, and as a just catch-all, all stones of diverse colors. I mean, I don't think that that's all stones, but if you get a rock, like if you get an agate that's multicolored. Also, Mercury rules the number 8. And I believe this is so because in Agrippa, he has these cool magic squares that you can draw on for talismans, and Mercury's is an 8x8 square. The Moon's is a 9x9 square, and then Venus's is a 7x7, Sun 6x6, and so on and so forth up to Saturn where it's a 3x3 square. It doesn't say definitively in a list, oh, this is the number of the planet, but I have a strong feeling that it is. It seems like it's implied. The angel of Mercury is Raphael, as it says here, and his day of the week is Wednesday. Back then, it used to be called Wotan's Day. Wotan's Day. Wednesday. You see what I mean? It's interesting. And usually, he rules the... It says here, and this goes for all the planets. So Sun, 1st and 8th hour of that day. And then Moon, 1st and 8th hour of that day. And then there's a bunch of other hours, but I would like to explain that a little bit more in detail later. So, I do want to go over physical descriptions, but I'm just going to give you general examples here. Basically, it just says, depicts a high stature and straight, thin, spare body, a high forehead and somewhat narrow, long face, long nose, fair eyes, neither perfectly black or gray, thin lips and nose, blah blah, and so on and so forth. I mean, this isn't really necessary. You don't have to imagine this when you're doing your rituals. It just kind of gives you an idea of what Mercury denotes physically. This is also important, and I like to think of this good. So you can use these ideas when you're considering well-dignified or ill-dignified places. It probably won't be like this all the time because they might not represent you, but they might represent your enemies or your brothers. Things to keep in mind if they're well-dignified or ill-dignified, and we will go over those after the well-dignified ones. When well-dignified, Mercury represents a man of subtle and political brain, intellect, and cogitation, an excellent disputant or logician, arguing with learning and discretion, and using much eloquence in his speech, a searcher into all kinds of mysteries and learnings, sharp and witty, learning almost anything without a teacher, ambitious of being exquisite in every science, desirous naturally of travel and seeing foreign parts, a man of an unwearied fancy, curious in the search of any occult knowledge, ably by his own genius to produce wonders. It's pretty cool. Given to divination and the more secret knowledge. If he turn merchant, no man exceeds him in a way of trade or invention, of new ways whereby to attain wealth. Pretty cool. That's not always how it's going to be. I mean, I have a pretty dignified Mercury, and I'm just a simpleton. But I think that it's cool that this is ideally what Mercury represents. Now, Unideally, the exact opposite is what he represents if badly placed. And again, this doesn't mean it's going to be you. Remember, the first house and the lord of the first house is you. Could be your brothers. It could be your children. Manners when badly placed. A troublesome wit, a kind of frenetic man, his tongue and pen against every man, wholly bent to spoil his estate, and time in prattling, and trying nice conclusions to no purpose. A great liar, boaster, prattler, busybody, false, a tale carrier, given to wicked arts, as necromancy, and such like ungodly knowledges. Easy of belief, an ass or very idiot, constant in no place or opinion, cheating and thieving everywhere, a newsmonger, pretending all manner of knowledge, but guilty of no true or solid learning, a trifler, a mere frantic fellow, if he prove a divine, then a mere verbal fellow, frothy of no judgment, easily perverted, constant in nothing but idle words and bragging. So, typically, this is why I say, if planets are badly placed, you're going to get stuff like this. You're going to get an ass or a very idiot. I mean, like I said, might not be you. There might be you, and you might be too stubborn to notice. But if Mercury rules let's say your third house in a bad position, you might have exactly that ill-placed, maybe in brothers or extended members of your family. Not always. There's always a different part of the story, and everything works together as a whole. Oh yeah, by the way, this part's my favorite. Saturn and Mercury co-rule magic as a whole. So, as tiny and pathetic looking of a marble of a planet that Mercury is, he's pretty awesome. And Saturn's cool too, but I also don't really like Saturn. I mean, I like him, but he's an asshole. Mercury's cool because magic and chemistry and stuff. So that's that, and that's Mercury. So hopefully you've learned something. You can always write in the comments anything that you want me to go over. I know a little bit more about Mercury because I've had to learn about him myself for my own means and ends. But again, I'm in no way an expert. These are just things that I would like to start you off with. I mean, I told you that I'd begin all of the 7 planets with basic understandings, and this is that. There's a whole bunch of other stuff we can cover in Agrippa, and I probably should do that, but I like SkyScript because I can just read it, and it's a little bit more organized. Anyway, that's it, and hope you like these videos. Comment and tell the world about traditional planetary magic.